Alright, Indie Hidden Gems are back! Woo! I've got a big backlog of games that I've captured, got a handsome special guest lined up, but first, a little update. So one of the ways I measured what counted as a hidden gem were those according to a website called Steam Spy. If it had less than 20,000 users to it, I counted it, but since then, Steam Spy's access has been very limited thanks to Steam's own policies taking effect. At first glance, they still have a lot of information on some of the larger games out there, and the data that they have for those games is a very small margin of error according to the website, but in some of the games that I'm looking for, they don't even have pages on Steam Spy. So in terms of how they sold, I'm pretty much flying blind. And you know what? That's okay. Hidden gems shouldn't just be purely commercial with the idea here. It's about games that simply aren't talked about, those that flew under the radar, and those that are just simply underappreciated. It's not limited to whatever Destructoid did or did not decide to cover, it's more of an I'll know it when I see it kind of idea. Having said that, let's take a look at a few underappreciated hidden gems. You might remember the first Hidden Gems video I did featured a game called Four Last Things, Joe Richardson's Monty Python-esque point-and-click adventure game using photoshopped classical paintings for its characters and its world. It was funny, inventive, and admittedly a bit strange. The bad news is that that game still counts as a hidden gem, even after my earth-shattering, hot-button, roaring triple buzzword endorsement on the game years ago. You'd think with my spectacular amount of influence it would be on the cover of Time magazine by now. But the good news is that Joe Richardson doesn't have a good enough sense to quit, because he again turned to Kickstarter to make a sequel called The Procession to Calvary, again named after another classical painting. If you haven't played Four Last Things, don't worry, as Calvary is designed to be enjoyed on its own, even if you didn't care to play his last game even though he worked very hard on it. Freaking ingrates. His skill as a Photoshop artist is just as apparent, meshing various paintings seamlessly into the world, and when it's not quite as seamless, it's played for laughs. And if there's anything that's grown since Four Last Thing, it's that Richardson has sharpened his sense of humor here. The game is downright wicked and at times fearlessly funny. There are jokes in the game I'm not even sure I can share on YouTube, and it had me laughing the entire way through. There's a dark boldness to his humor. It's a risk taker and has a lot more to say about its art than Four Last Things did. Richardson has a great understanding of artistic integrity, and how he breaks the fourth wall trope breathes new life into it. The level of moon logic needed to solve the puzzles here is just as minimal as Four Last Things. I only had to look up a walkthrough twice, and most of the puzzles aren't too tricky to figure out. The only major annoying puzzle here involves you memorizing lyrics to a song. It's a pretty unforgiving sequence that's not only inconsistent with the rest of the game, but it had me going through it more times than I care to mention. Regardless, it's a minor gripe in a game that's still a real bright spot of a point-and-click adventure game in 2020. It's funnier, more clever, and super easy to recommend, even if you're not the biggest point-and-click adventure game aficionado. Both games in this series are great, but Richardson really outdid himself with his new tale of dark woe. Oh, and Calvary has a lot of really nice, soothing classical music to listen to as well. Whatever I should play next should have something that really carries that quiet, relaxing tone to take away some of the stress of the modern day. God damn it. Oh boy, do I have a relationship with this infuriatingly picky, rage-inducing, keyboard-chucking, I need to call the repairman because I punched another hole through the brick wall again game. JUMPGRID aptly describes itself as a bullet hell hyper Pac-Man. It's done by Australian developer Ian McLarty with a simple goal. On a large grid, you have to collect all the pieces and make it to the center without getting hit. And when you do get hit, it almost immediately resets the level at the same pattern, and you'll have to find just the right rhythm to make it through. The difficulty curve here is just right, and this game will absolutely put hair on your chest, but it's also a master class in game flow. McLarty designed it with a solid, locked 60 frames per second, where even when you get hit, it never breaks your rhythm playing it. It has that Super Meat Boy quality to it, where the death transition doesn't waste your time, and somehow matches your rhythm playing it. Rhythm is a good word to describe the real core of playing the game. The pattern you find gives you such a specific sense of timing to find the right opening that you have it memorized, and it feels like you're playing notes from a piece of music. It's a very unique flow that you find to get through each and every level. It certainly has a rhythm in mind for each, and it presents its own risk versus reward to snag that one lingering piece. It's also impressive how McLarty is a one-person team here, with its art, programming, and even the soundtrack having a fitting, pulsating tone throughout the entire Rage session. I found out about this game through a games festival and instantly fell in love with it for the first 10 minutes playing it. It hooks you in and grabs a hold of you for that just one more try mentality. In researching this game, it doesn't have a single Metacritic review on it. You'll find a few smaller articles on some websites here and there, but considering this didn't really have a publisher to it, it got almost completely overlooked. The difficulty curve will understandably alienate some, and right now it's only available on computers. But for those tough enough looking to brave an infuriating mountain to climb, this will be an absolute treat. It's a standout check-no trip for hard-knuckle players that I'm truly surprised is still a hidden gem. And now it's time for a special guest that I somehow conned to making a video for me. The 8-Bit Duke has been a friend of mine for a really long time and has a YouTube channel featuring a good variety of reviews and retrospectives for your lunch break needs. And if you know his channel and his taste, this next game is the most Duke game to ever Duke the Duke, to Duke the Duke, the beyond, the beyond, the beyond, from the beyond, the beyond. Take it away, Mr. Nukem.
Anyone who knows me is aware there's one bundle of games on the Nintendo Entertainment System I absolutely love: Shadowgate, Deja Vu, and Uninvited. The MacVenture games that were wonderfully ported from their original home on the Macintosh to the NES are unique adventure games across various settings and scenarios, with a simple interface, fun dialogue, and maybe most fun of all, a bunch of ways to die. There are a few different games out there inspired by these iconic adventure titles. Graph Metal's Infested and Spectacle are wonderful and also very free, but one title I want to talk about is Sucker Free Games' From Beyond Prologue, a light horror point-and-click adventure game available on Steam for Mac, PC, and Linux for just a couple of dollars. From Beyond Prologue puts you in the role of Professor Tillinghast on a one-man academic expedition during the winter of 1910 in the mountains of Europe, and takes place in an ancient village left behind by time, and maybe something else. Your main goal is to uncover what happened to leave the village in such a state, with strange ooze amid large swaths of destruction and bodies everywhere, as well as finding your way into a strange black tower in the center of town. There's a sort of Lovecraftian vibe going around, and your character's delightfully late Victorian era style gives him a little bit more charm than the heroes of the NES inspiration may have enjoyed. The interface is wonderfully NES MacVenture to a T, with your inventory on one side and a small window to the world on the other, and there's basic commands to interact with both. There's a ton of items to collect, and while only some of them are useful, actually, there's no penalty for taking everything, other than being a pack rat in the inventory screen. Solving puzzles range from the basic find the key to open the right door, to even distracting an ugly creature with a cuter creature, and remembering that do not enter may be a good thing to pay attention to. There are notes all over town telling a story and leaving clues behind what happened and what you will have to do in order to progress. Tillinghast will also experience wonderfully animated visions of what happened to some of the poor souls of this town, and his journal gives you some insight into what he's thinking as you explore the game. One thing any good adventure game needs are interesting ways to meet your demise, and From Beyond Prologue has plenty, ranging from the commonplace to the truly horrific. And each screen, deadly or otherwise, has some wonderful pixel art for you to admire. From Beyond Prologue is not a terribly long game, and neither were the NES games it draws inspiration from. And while there are some unique, out-of-the-box thinking involved, the puzzles are not too obtuse for players to find the solutions. Sucker Free Games is working on the follow-up to this, and I hope we'll see more about what happens in this world soon, because it's obvious that a hidden gem like this is made with more passion in mind than profit. And at just a few dollars, it's an absolute steal. If you're a fan of the wonderful Kemco ports of the classic Macintosh adventure games from ICOM Simulations, you owe it to yourself to experience From Beyond Prologue.
So you know that I have a soft spot for quirky Japanese platformers, right? You get that, right? Correct? Good, because of my ongoing quest to convert as many people to playing weird underground jumpy games from glorious Nippon, you can bet that Pharaoh Rebirth Plus caught my attention pretty quickly. Crowbone Station, who's been making games since 1998, is a developer here through Daijika's Steam localization. Treasure hunter Jonathan Bansfield got himself porco-rossoed as a human in rabbit form and finds himself in an old Egyptian ruin searching for treasure. The Bellic-esque rival of the game, Andre, shows up, who's apparently well-funded enough to have military-grade weaponry with him, and against his better judgment curses both himself and Jonathan into finding MacGuffins before they're sacrificed to the resurrected Pharaoh. So, you know, a typical romance story. There's a lot to do and a lot of variety in the gameplay here, like momentum-based platforming, a little bit of grappling hook action, and level designs ranging from exploration-based featuring hidden items, and ones pulled straight out of Donkey Kong Country with a minecart level, this time trading in the cart for a jeep. The bunny doctor can jump and attack baddies with his ears, both standing, and a sort of circle attack in the air that can land a combo attack. It reminds me a lot of Kirby whenever he gains a sword, and here it's very satisfying and useful to take out foes in the way. And later on, you even get to play as Andre for his own set of abilities and moves for a level that's designed around him. It has well-animated characters giving nice touches to their weights as they move around, and it's got a fun, quirky style to it. My personal favorite is fighting different bellhops and throw luggage at you, or you can morph your ears into a paper airplane and somehow glide down with that ability. There's a nice level of challenge here, offering a well-balanced difficulty curve, and it does require you to have a bit of patience and think about your attacks as you play. It took me about 6 hours to get through the main game with an additional level, as well as a bunch of extra secrets to find and re-explore. Pharaoh Rebirth Plus evokes a lot of charm that I've wanted to see more and more when it comes to bedroom hobbyists from Glorious Nippon, and this definitely scratches that itch that I've had for a long time. The developer's passion is very clear here, and the mileage that I got from playing this game makes me curious why it's remained an unknown status. Considering how well-regarded J indies like Momodora have found a cult following, you'd think there'd be enough room for Bunny Kirby over here. And considering it's only $10 on Steam, it's hard not to recommend giving this a quick look. I am no programmer by any stretch of the imagination, and to this day, I think of all the games that I play and the time people spend looking at white screens, thinking of ifs and that's and ones and zeros. It makes me wonder the same thing when I see people eating mustard on anything. Why would you want to do that to yourselves? An old favorite puzzle game of mine, Beglitched, does a solid job at explaining how my agony is another person's jam. It was inspired by co-creator A.P. Thompson's love of debugging, which he describes as one of the most unliked aspects of programming that he enjoys very much. The idea of feeling like a master detective, so he and co-creator Jenny Jiao Xia at Hexecutable set out to create that feeling, and they've churned out a pretty fresh-feeling Puzzle League-style game out of it. Everything's done on a computer interface where you're exploring different files with tips left by the Glitch Witch in order to get to the very end of the witch's pink bricked road. You know, programming! You'll first navigate around different connected files that give clues on how to find the exit. Here you can peek into the files to let you know the kinds of programs that are hidden in each of the folders next to the files, and you'll have to guess based on what the surrounding folders have to say about their connected ones. Inside, you'll see different attackers that wander around the map, and if you run into one of them, then you go into a Tetris Attack style battle screen. Here, there's an enemy hiding underneath the icons, and you have to smoke them out using different spaces on the board. One element that makes this so tricky is battery life, as moving the different pieces will cost energy, which you can gain back by combining 3 batteries, or getting a combo of the same pieces matching. You'll have to do this very quickly, as the baddies will attack you after a certain amount of turns. It's a tense game, and your limited resources and time make it a bit frantic to find the baddie attacking you, but once you do, it's a rewarding and satisfying feeling. The later levels have a lot of variations to mix things up and to make things more difficult, such as having moving characters on the board or needing to protect precious cargo, in this case cat pictures, cause, you know, priorities. The difficulty may be a little bit too much for some players, as there's very little room for errors, but its flow and pacing had me hooked for a while. To the team's credit, it does make me feel like a programmer, in the sense that I ask myself, if this happens, then I can do this, and if there's that, then that means the exit's over here, and if that happens, then it goes there. It's all presented with a high level of personality, from the dialogue that you find to the colorful animated characters that make up the world. Beglitched is a tough-as-nails puzzle game that feels really fresh, and it's surprising that it's still a bit of a gem after all this time. Beglitched comes recommended for those looking for a cute new take on Tetris Attack. Just don't expect the difficulty curve to be anywhere near as cute as the rest of the game. Alright, there you have 5 hidden gems that are aching to find a new home in your game's library. I hope you found something you enjoyed, and a big, huge thanks to 8-Bit Duke for joining me. Feel free to check out his channel, and if you enjoyed mine, give me a like, subscribe, bell ring, and all that fun social media stuff in between your memes. And as long as I'm asking you things, I'll get a burger, fries, hold the onions, Diet Coke with 1 Splenda. I'm on a diet.